Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. For producers taking advantage of dual-purpose wheat, First Hollow Stem is right around the corner. Today we begin with a Mesonet tool designed to help you plan and decide just when the right time is to start moving cattle.
First hollow stem is the growth stage in wheat in which the grain head is still below the soil surface, but it's really quickly transitioning into getting above the soil surface. And what you see is when you would dig up a plant and you'd split the stem, you'll see approximately 1.5 centimeters of hollow stem from the base of the plant to that small grain head. And this growth stage is important because this is the time in which we need to remove cattle from our wheat pastures without leading to any more decrease in our yield potential. So we'll start thinking about first hollow stem kind of that end of February into March, and that can vary from year to year depending on the type of weather conditions we have as well as the variety we're planting. So we need to understand the variety we're planting and knowing whether or not it's one that gets to first hollow stem quicker than others, and then what are the weather conditions we're having. Is it warmer than normal or has it been cooler than normal? So we have great ways of getting first hollow stem measurements when we go out into the field, but that takes a lot of scouting, and depending on the weather conditions we may not have a great idea when that's occurring. And that's where the first hollow stem advisor developed with the folks at Mesonet really can help us give us a chance of when is first hollow stem occurring and how quickly is it advancing throughout the state.
This is a product that we developed several years ago as a predictive tool for growers who run cattle on wheat fields. As you may know, research has shown that every day you leave cattle on past the first hollow stem stage, you can get anywhere from 1 to 5% grain yield loss per day, which is pretty significant. So it's important to remove cattle by first hollow stem. So this product shows you where you are currently across the state with respect to your particular wheat variety, and then we give 1 and 2 week projections to give you an idea when first hollow stem may be reached, so to give you a little bit lead time to prepare to remove your cattle. There's 3 categories of wheat varieties for these models. There's what we call the early FHS varieties, the middle, and the late. And we have 3 different models for each of those varieties. If you don't know what category your variety is, there's a lookup table. You can select your wheat variety and it'll automatically put it into the early, middle, or late stages. And then you'll look at the appropriate product.
Last weekend's ice and rain left us with a lot of moisture. No one was left out. On a 5-day rainfall map from January 13th to January 18th, Putnam and Fairview tied for the highest rainfall amounts, 3 44/100 inches of rain. We had reached a critical time for winter wheat and canola. This moisture gives farmers a renewed chance for a crop this year. The Oklahoma Mesonet dual rain gauges are not heated. When we get ice, sleet, or snow, it collects in the top of the rain gauge. The top is tall enough to hold plenty of ice or sleet. While it doesn't hold a lot of snow, snow in Oklahoma tends to be on the dry side. Ice, sleet, or snow that falls into the top of the rain gauge will be recorded as it melts. Our upper soil moisture situation has really improved. A map of the change in soil moisture at 10 inches over 7 days from January 11th to January 17th shows all the increases. 25 sites increased by 5/10 or more in fractional water content. A change of 5/10 or higher means the water held in the soil increased by 50% or more at 10 inches. That's a huge change over 7 days in the middle of winter. Here's Gary with a look at how all this moisture impacted our drought situation.
Thanks, Al, and good morning, everyone. Now, as Al told you, parts of the state did receive significant amounts of moisture. Unfortunately, some of that did come in the form of that damaging ice, but it is Oklahoma, and a lot of times moisture does come with unfortunate circumstances. Well, let's take a look at that latest drought monitor map, see who received the most benefit from that moisture. Still have lots of drought in the state, and I'll show you why here in a second, but we did see a reduction in a lot of that severe drought, that darker brown color across northwestern Oklahoma, that extreme drought, the red area across east central and down in southeastern Oklahoma. Now let me show you why. This is a departure from normal rainfall map for the last 90 days. Now, despite the moisture we've had recently, we're still had the 29th driest last 90 days on record. That's October 20th through January 17th. For northeastern, east central, and southeastern Oklahoma, it was their 17th, 8th, and 19th driest such period on record, respectively. And those records date back to 1921. So we have short-term moisture versus long-term deficits, and that is the reason we have the continuing drought across Oklahoma. Now, if we look on the U.S. seasonal drought outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, this is valid for mid-January through the rest of April. April 30th, 2017, we do see that drought is expected to persist across much of the eastern two-thirds of the state, but some improvement or removal is possible across the northwestern one-third. So Panhandle, northwest Oklahoma, some improvement is possible in that area. So if we get some good spring rainfall, maybe that outlook map will look a little bit better as we get into the next few months. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Talking research now, you don't need a PhD to get more out of your crop. In fact, simple adjustments and record keeping can make a difference in your final yield. Here's our Extension Soil Nutrient Management Specialist, Brian Arnell, to explain.
You know, as we get into tighter budgets, economic reasons and environmental reasons to be more sound with our inputs, to maximize the efficiency that our inputs go in, to get as much out of the ground as possible, really refining our practices to our specific production system, to our specific soils, farms, is a really useful tool for producers. You know, on-farm trials and on-farm research, producer-led research, is really gaining now. One reason is just the technology has really come to the point where we can utilize it. We have the yield monitors to collect the data. We have an array of sensors that can go in fields to collect in-field data. And we have programs that help us design, lay out, and do the statistics on more in-depth research. One of the easiest tools, one of the easiest techniques is just a strip study. Strip study is just a pass, a with and without pass, just a side-by-side study. Now that allows you the analysis or the observations between A and B. One of the mistakes that I see often in this strip study is, well, you know, just a side-by-side pass isn't enough. I want more. I want one half of the field versus the other half of the field. As far as the data interpretation, if you do that with not enough past data and enough knowledge on that field, and I say horrible is because let's say you have an 80-acre field. You do one practice on the north, one practice on the south. You harvest those two areas separately. You look at the data as a whole, that this 40 acres cut an average of 40 bushel, this 40 acres cut an average of 35 bushel. That means I harvested 5 more acres due to their practice on this side. The problem is that if you don't have the past data to look at it, that 5 bushel difference could just be the land itself. It might even be that this side did better than normal, that 35 bushel did better than normal, but because that's a poorer piece of ground, you'll never know the difference. Now, if you have enough yield history, if you have 3 to 5 years of previous yield maps, then you can do the half, where you split a field in half and look at it that way. But just to go out there on a field that you don't have that past history on and know specifically what is the difference between those two, it can lead to some really erroneous decisions or recommendations on products. Now on the strip study, if we look at a pass that's 30 foot wide header width right next to another header width, the easiest thing to do is collect that whole pass as a value and the second pass as a value and have A versus B. That's a lot better than field by field because you are side by side. However, soil variability goes from one foot to the next. Even if you don't have yield monitor, go 200 yards, 300 yards, stop, dump in a weigh wagon, go another 300 yards, and do it in segments. So we call it subsampling. Even though you just have 2 passes, you get a lot more information out of it, and you can make a lot better decisions about what happened and what may have led to the difference in that. And it's that on-off on things like that I really think will make a huge impact on the way we manage our inputs, whether it's fertility or pest management. So the on-off, the check strips, you don't have statistics. You use your eyes, look at the number of berries, the head size. Yield is always something that's very important. Always feel free to contact your county educator. Maybe think about doing a Partners in Progress with Oklahoma State University and the Extension and the state specialist. We're always looking at opportunities to do on-farm evaluations and demonstrations. It's a great way for producers to learn more about their production systems, and for us as state specialists to learn about the new techniques and the techniques that the producers are interested in and how they're impacting different regions of the state.
Some Oklahomans may be making that decision to graze out their wheat or not. And Rodney, what are some of the things that producers need to be thinking about whenever they say, you know, I'm gonna just leave my cattle on, the price of wheat just isn't gonna be what I hoped it was?
Well, you're absolutely correct in pointing out that obviously one of the huge decision factors that would play into that decision would be the fact that we're just simply looking at much lower wheat prices, and that's not only true of the wheat futures market, but our basis is considerably worse, wider, meaning cash prices are much lower than they were a year ago, and certainly 2 to 3 years ago, which provides a lot of producers the opportunity to at least consider some alternatives for what to do with that wheat crop out there, and grazing out may be one viable alternative.
Are there standards or buttons that producers need to look at that once the price hits this point, I'm just going to go ahead and graze the cattle, or is it just a day-by-day adjustment?
It's probably not quite as simple as just having a trigger point. Mm-hmm. What producers need to do is of course consider the benefits versus the costs of grazing out the wheat compared with taking it to harvest. And so they have to think about, what would I give up if I were going to do that, and compare that with what I would gain if I were going to graze the wheat out. What they're going to give up is pretty straightforward. Bushels times price harvested. So for example, if they were thinking they had the potential for a 35 bushel wheat crop out there, and they're thinking harvest time local prices might be say $4 or something like that, what they're giving up is say $140 an acre in wheat revenue. And then they need to compare that with what they have the potential to gain from grazing the wheat out.
So actually, what are some of the benefits to grazing out?
Well, there's a couple different angles to look at. One obvious or one perhaps not so obvious benefit would be the cost reduction that would be involved with grazing out versus harvesting. Mm-hmm. And that's primarily, in most cases, associated with the harvest cost itself, which would not be incurred if they chose to graze out. You know, we normally consider that to be, you know, not such a huge deal. If we're in an era of high grain prices, we just endure that harvest cost. With low grain prices on a relative scale, harvest costs are kind of a big deal. $30, $35 an acre that you're not going to have to incur if you graze the wheat out. Then of course there's the revenue from grazing it out, and that's going to depend on a number of different factors as well. For example, if you're taking in cattle on a gain contract, there's a market for that. And you know, lately what I've been hearing is somewhere maybe around 45 cents per pound of gain. So if you think you can get 200 to 300 pounds of gain for the graze out period off of an acre of wheat, and of course that's going to depend on the quality of your forage and grazing conditions and growing conditions and all of those kinds of things, but that's going to translate to $90 to $130, $135 an acre. Add that to the benefit of not having to harvest the wheat, and you're up there. You compete quite nicely with harvesting, say, a 35 bushel crop pretty quickly. So in today's environment, that producer really needs to consider what they think the value of that grain is going to be, what's their yield potential, and compare that with, in their situation, what is the value of that gain that can be garnered by grazing the animals on that forage.
Okay, thank you much. Rodney Jones, ag economist here at Oklahoma State University.
As we approach this spring's calving season, I think it's a good idea to put together what I call a calving kit. All the equipment that we're going to need in the situation where we first find that first 2-year-old heifer that needs some help this spring. Part of that calving kit, I think, should be a calving protocol, a plan, if you will, for your family, neighbors, hired hands that might be around that will be helping when a particular cow or heifer needs some assistance. On that protocol, I think it's very, very important that we have phone numbers for the large animal veterinarian in our area, perhaps his cell phone number, numbers of relatives and neighbors that might be willing to help us during the calving season. As I put together my calving kit, I'm going to start with a plastic bucket, or perhaps even a stainless steel pail, something that I can put all of these important pieces of equipment in one spot. And I'm going to locate that bucket in an area that everyone in the family knows where it is and can reach it. In the bucket, of course, we're going to put our obstetrical chains. And I like to use chains rather than straps because we can get those things cleaned and disinfected, and we want to do that in between each time that we use them. And of course, those chains need the handles, so make sure you've got those located and have them in your calving kit. Obstetrical sleeves, plastic disposable sleeves, are very, very handy so that you can try to keep yourself as well as the cow from getting infected. Making sure that as you use these things each time when you're helping a cow or heifer, that you replenish that supply so that you're ready the next time is very, very important. Have a bottle of the tincture of iodine. This is what's going to be necessary to dip the navel of that baby calf and spread around the navel area so that he has a less likely chance of getting an infection due to that navel opening. A lubricant is always important whenever you're working with a cow or a heifer. In the case of delivering the calf, it's the same situation with artificial insemination or preg checking. You can buy commercial lubricants, but quite frankly, one that works just as well is a non-detergent dish soap. You can buy these at any of the local grocery stores. That bottle cost me less than $2 and will go a long ways towards getting us through this calving season as a lubricant. It'll really work well. And of course, you probably want to include several old towels, bath towels that have already been used up around the house, and if your spouse doesn't like that particular idea, go ahead and get a roll of paper towels and stick in so that you can clean that area around the back end of the cow or the heifer before you start to do the examination. Reduce the likelihood of introducing some pathogens into her reproductive tract. Some simple things that you probably want to also keep in mind is to have a flashlight included in your calving kit. A good one that you can find that cow or heifer out in the lot that's down in the throes of labor and because you're probably going to do quite a little bit of this at night. And of course, spare batteries are very, very important, because you don't want to go out there at 2 a.m. and find out that the batteries are getting weak, and you have to go back to the house to try to locate some new batteries in order to go and search for that cow or heifer that needs your help. Last on our list is something that one of the popular press magazines last year called one of the 6 most important items to include in their calving kit for ranchers all across America. And that was a publication that we wrote here at Oklahoma State University called Calving Time Management for Beef Cows and Heifers. And everyone in your operation should review it before the calving season begins. I think if you'll do that, you can help improve the chances of saving more calves this spring and helping that bottom line as we take those valuable calves to town the following fall. Now, you can go to the SUNUP website, that's sunup.okstate.edu, look under show links, and you'll find the link to download this very important document. Well, I hope this gives you some idea of what I might include in a calving kit, and that way that you'll be ready for this upcoming calving season.
Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist, is here now. And Kim, a lot of stuff's been going on the last 6 months or so, and we want to sort it out today. Let's look at whether producers should sell the wheat that they have in storage.
Well, producers have had about a $1 increase in the wheat price since it bottomed out late August, early September. You look at the loan, $3.15, another 3 cents for interest if you're taking wheat out of the loan. If they take it out of the loan, they'll save about 3 months storage. That's anywhere from 12 to 15 cents. So they're looking at a net price somewhere around $3.50, $3.60. I think if they've got it in the loan, now's a good time to start bringing it out and bring it all out or staggered in the market over the next few weeks or the next couple months.
And then what's your take on pricing 2017 harvested wheat?
Well, I wouldn't do that. We've had a price rally in the harvest wheat prices. If you're forward contracting, you're looking at about $1 under basis. I think that basis as we get into harvest is probably going to be down in that 60 or 70 cent range.
Let's talk about the forecast now and kind of how that's going to play into some management decisions the next few months, especially in terms of top dressing.
Right. Well, we can look at top dressing, putting down the nitrogen. I talked to some producers and some fertilizer dealers. It's about 43 cents per pound of N applied. It takes about 2 pounds of N per bushel of wheat. So you're looking at 86 cents per bushel of wheat. Even if you've got $3.75, which is what you can forward contract it for, that's a no-brainer. For 88 cents, I can get $3.75. I can reduce some of this loss. Now, if you look at the weather situation, the 90-day forecast is for above average temperatures and average moisture. Now, that tells me that the wheat's probably going to come out of dormancy maybe a little earlier. We'll probably have an early harvest. The moisture, it's going to be a matter of timing, but with average moisture above average temperatures, I'd probably expect an average crop. That tells me if we can have test weight and protein, that our basis, come down for that -$, to that -70 cents, pick up 30 cents there. Plus, I think we'll have a rally in the futures price, and we'll have a higher price at June because of that.
And then sell the wheat?
I think sell the wheat at harvest, or this may be the year, because between the lines, we're getting reduced production expectations around the world. If that will continue, we'll get that big price increase in September, October time period. I'd store some this year, but we'll make that decision as we get closer to harvest.
Always appreciate your perspective, Kim. We'll see you next week.
Hi, welcome to Shop Stop. Today we want to talk a little bit about troubleshooting the charging system on small engines.
So what we're going to do is show you a simple way to check them out. And one of the first things you want to do is to check your battery. And we've shown you how to do that before, but what you can do is you put your leads on your battery, and you can see this is reading at like 1264. And if you load this, that doesn't mean that your battery's good. If you put a load on that, that can drop down to a real low voltage. It's the amperage that we're wanting to crank with. Then if we're going to check our alternator, this has an alternator on it, and if we're going to check our charging system, then we're going to see if this climbs up to, say, 13.5 volts. If it doesn't make 13.5 volts, we're not going to be able to charge our battery. So that's what we're going to do now. When we start it up, we'll see what this voltage does when we crank it, and then we'll, with a load, and then we'll see what it does when it's fired up and the alternator's running. Okay, give it a little throttle. So you saw us start the unit up, and you saw that it started fine, and the voltage came back up a little bit. We started out like 14.4 something, and we dropped down, and then it came up a little bit. But when we were running and we brought the throttle up, you could see that we weren't gaining any more voltage, and so we need to have 13.5 volts to charge that battery.
So if the alternator is not functioning correctly, it's not going to be putting the amperage back into the battery that's going to allow us to keep running over time. And so we'll gradually, it may start, but the battery now is powering the whole system, and it will gradually draw the battery down until the next time it won't start.
So now he needs to dig into the alternator and see what the problem is there, and either replace it or find out what components are bad in it.
So that's just a little tip for troubleshooting the charging system on small engine type systems. We'll see you next week on Shop Stop.
Thanks so much for joining us for SUNUP this week. Remember, you can find us anytime at sunup.okstate.edu, and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at SUNUP.